Have you ever noticed that resting doesn't actually feel like resting anymore? You finally finish work, you sit down, open Netflix, scroll your phone, maybe even take an afternoon off, and yet, somewhere in the back of your mind, a voice quietly whispers, you should be doing something. Answer one more email, learn a new skill, go to the gym, read another book, clean the house, plan tomorrow. Even our moments of rest have started to feel productive. We've become incredibly good at optimizing our lives. There are apps that track our sleep, apps that track our exercise, apps that measure our focus. Even meditation now comes with streaks, scores, and performance statistics. Somehow, we've turned relaxation into another task to complete. So we blame ourselves, we tell ourselves we are bad at switching off, that we're addicted to our phones, that we lack discipline. That if we could just manage our time a little better, we'd finally feel rested. But what if that's the wrong question? What if the real mystery isn't, why can't I relax? But why did resting ever feel natural in the first place? For almost every human who has ever lived, there was no concept of work-life balance, no productivity podcasts, no burnout seminars, no vacation planners, no weekend countdown, and yet, for reasons that have almost nothing to do with modern medicine, people understood something about rest that we've quietly forgotten. Not because they were wiser, not because their lives were easier. In fact, their lives were unimaginably harder than ours. But hidden inside that hardship was a rhythm of life that modern civilization accidentally erased. This isn't the story of why people became lazy or why smartphones ruined our attention. It's the story of how we built a world that never tells us when enough is enough. A world where work has no natural ending, where every free moment can become productive. Where the day no longer ends with the setting sun, but with the moment you finally decide to close your laptop. And that single change may have transformed the way millions of people experience rest itself. For almost all of human history, the day ended very differently. For most of human history, human beings never had to learn how to rest, not because they possessed extraordinary self-control, but because the world itself created moments of rest. Imagine waking up 30,000 years ago. There are no notifications, no meetings waiting, no unread messages, no calendar reminding you that you're already behind. Your day begins with one simple question: what does the tribe need today? Maybe it's hunting, maybe gathering berries, maybe repairing a shelter before the rains arrive, maybe doing nothing at all. Because not every day demanded the same amount of work. Modern life teaches us to imagine prehistoric humans constantly struggling to survive, running from predators, searching endlessly for food, working every waking hour. But anthropology paints a far more complicated picture. Many hunter-gatherer societies worked only as much as their environment demanded. When food was plentiful, work stopped, people talked, children played, stories were told around the fire. Hours passed without anyone trying to optimize them. Time wasn't divided into productive and unproductive. It was simply life. As agriculture spread and villages replaced camps, life became harder in many ways. Farming required relentless effort. Harvests determined survival. Entire communities depended on months of exhausting labor. But even then, rest wasn't something individuals had to negotiate. It arrived with the seasons. After planting, there was waiting. After harvest, there was celebration. Winter slowed everything down. The land itself decided when work paused. Nature created boundaries that nobody argued with. Even the medieval world, often remembered only for hardship, understood something we've largely forgotten. The calendar wasn't built entirely around work. It was built around interruption. Religious festivals, harvest feasts, holy days, market gatherings, weddings that lasted for days, communal meals. Entire villages stopped working together, not because productivity had been achieved, but because the rhythm of society demanded it. No one worried about falling behind while everyone else rested too. Perhaps that's the crucial difference. For almost all of human history, rest wasn't a personal decision. It was a collective experience. When the village stopped, everyone stopped. When darkness fell, the world grew quiet. When winter arrived, even the land seemed to exhale. No one needed permission to disconnect, because there was nothing left to connect to. Then, over just a few generations, humanity performed one of the greatest experiments in its history. We built a civilization where work no longer followed the rhythms of nature. It followed the rhythm of the clock. And that single invention would quietly change not only how we worked, but whether we ever truly felt finished. For thousands of years, nature decided when work began, and nature decided when it ended. Then, almost overnight in historical terms, humanity handed that responsibility to something else, the clock. Before the Industrial Revolution, most people still lived according to daylight, weather, and the changing seasons. You couldn't farm at midnight. You couldn't repair a roof during a storm. When darkness arrived, work naturally slowed. But factories introduced a revolutionary idea. Productivity no longer depended on the sun. It depended on hours. A machine didn't care whether it was sunrise or midnight. It only cared whether someone was operating it. For the first time in history, time itself became something that could be bought and sold. The clock transformed more than work. It transformed how people thought about themselves. A person's day was no longer measured by what needed to be done. It was measured by how many hours they could produce. Minutes became money, efficiency became virtue, and being busy slowly became a symbol of importance. The more exhausted you were, the more valuable you appeared. Then came electricity. For hundreds of thousands of years, sunset had been one of the strongest biological signals on Earth. It told our brains, the day is over. Electric light quietly erased that signal. Suddenly, the day didn't have to end. Shops stayed open, factories ran through the night, offices extended their hours. Cities glowed long after the sun had disappeared. Human beings had conquered darkness. But in doing so, we also erased one of the oldest boundaries our minds had ever known. The 20th century accelerated everything. Telephones meant work could reach your home. Computers meant work could follow you anywhere. The internet removed the difference between the office and the living room. Then smartphones removed the difference between work and every other moment of your life. You no longer had to be at work for work to be with you. And something subtle happened. The workday stopped having an ending. There was always one more email, one more notification, one more article to read, one more task to finish. The list never truly became empty. For almost every generation before us, stopping work was decided by the environment. For us, stopping work became a personal choice, and that's an incredibly difficult decision for a brain that evolved in a world full of natural stopping points. Today, many of us carry an invisible feeling that we've forgotten how to explain. We close the laptop, but mentally, we're still working. We lie in bed, still planning tomorrow. We go on vacation and spend the first 3 days checking our inbox. Even when we're technically resting, part of our mind refuses to believe that it's allowed. Not because we're weak, not because we're addicted to productivity, but because we've built a civilization where work has become psychologically endless. Our ancestors didn't have better self-control than we do. They had something far more powerful. A world that constantly reminded them when enough was enough. The question is, what happens to the human mind when those reminders disappear? Here's the strange part. Nothing we've talked about so far means that modern life is wrong. Electricity isn't the problem. The internet isn't the problem. Working hard isn't the problem. The real problem is something much quieter. Our biology is ancient. Our environment is brand new. Every human brain alive today is built by evolution that unfolded over hundreds of thousands of years. For almost all of that time, the world was full of endings. The sun disappeared, the fire burned low, winter arrived, the harvest was complete. There were constant signals telling your nervous system, today's work is over. Those signals didn't just organize society, they organized the human mind. Today, most of those signals have disappeared. Your laptop doesn't set with the sun, your inbox doesn't sleep. Your phone doesn't experience winter. There is always another notification, another article, another meeting, another opportunity, another reason not to stop. For the first time in human history, your brain lives in an environment where done almost never exists. Think about your average evening. You don't simply stop working, you decide to stop, and those aren't the same thing. The decision carries uncertainty. Did I do enough today? Should I answer that email now? Maybe I'll just spend another 20 minutes. Every evening becomes a negotiation with yourself, a negotiation our ancestors rarely had to conduct. Psychologists call this the Zeigarnik effect ***. Our minds naturally hold onto unfinished tasks more strongly than completed ones. It's why an unanswered email can quietly occupy your thoughts for hours, why you remember what still needs doing far more vividly than everything you've already accomplished. For most of history, life itself created completion. Today, our to-do lists regenerate faster than we can finish them. The brain keeps waiting for closure that never arrives. This helps explain one of the strangest experiences of modern life, physical exhaustion without feeling mentally finished. You can work for 10 hours, answer dozens of messages, complete meaningful projects, and still lie in bed feeling as though you accomplished nothing. Not because you didn't work hard, but because your environment never gave your mind permission to believe the workday had actually ended. Perhaps that's why so many of us struggle with rest, not because we forgot how, but because we've removed almost every natural cue that once made rest feel safe. Our ancestors didn't need extraordinary discipline to stop working. Their world stopped with them. Ours keeps going, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, whether we participate or not. And once you understand that, a different question begins to emerge. Maybe the goal isn't to become better at resting. Maybe it's to rebuild the conditions that once made rest feel completely natural. Perhaps that's why so many people finish an ordinary Tuesday feeling as though they've failed, not because they didn't work hard enough, but because the day never told them it was over. For hundreds of thousands of years, the world itself ended the workday. The sun disappeared, the fire burned low, the fields grew dark, winter covered the land. There were boundaries no human being had to invent. The environment whispered something our civilization rarely does anymore. That's enough for today. Today, the world whispers the opposite. Your inbox is still open. Someone somewhere is still working. Another notification arrives. Another headline appears. Another meeting can be scheduled. Another goal can be pursued. Our technology has achieved something extraordinary. It has removed almost every natural stopping point from human life. And without realizing it, we've begun to confuse *** constant availability with * normal human existence ***. This helps explain why genuine rest often feels uncomfortable. The first hour of a vacation can feel strangely anxious. A quiet Sunday afternoon can feel unproductive. Even sitting still sometimes creates guilt. Not because we're lazy, not because we've forgotten how to relax, but because our brains evolved in a world where rest was signaled by the environment, not defended against it. History doesn't suggest that we should abandon modern life. Our ancestors faced hardships we can barely imagine. Disease, famine, violence, child mortality, most of us would never choose to live their lives. But they possessed something we've quietly traded away, a civilization that understood the importance of endings. The end of the workday, the end of the harvest, the end of winter, the end of the week, moments when the entire community stopped together. Not because every task had been completed, but because human beings aren't designed to live without pauses. Perhaps that's the greatest irony of modern civilization. We've built machines that never need to sleep. Networks that never go offline, markets that never truly close, and then we quietly began expecting ourselves to function the same way. But we're not machines. We're still carrying the same nervous systems that gathered around campfires long before clocks, offices, or smartphones ever existed. Technology changed almost everything about the world around us. It changed almost nothing about the brains inside our heads. So perhaps the next time you feel guilty for resting, ask yourself a different question, not, have I earned a break? But what kind of world did the human mind evolve to live in? Because once you understand that, something remarkable happens. Rest stops feeling like weakness. It starts feeling like something much older, something deeply human,